The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
KNUS Denver. You dialed up right.
Right here, right now.
News Talk 710, KNUS, the new home of Peter Boyles in the morning.
Right here, right now. Right here, right now.
Bang! Pow! Better believe it. Straight up. 7:58. 2 minutes before 8 o'clock. Again, we started now, 5 a.m., live at 5 here on 710 KNUS AM. And, of course, the simulcast continues, 710knus.com. I'm Peter Boyles. Good morning. The weather, 43 for the high today, 53 on Saturday. Playoff game weather, 48 on Sunday, maybe a little bit of snow. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday stays in the high 40s and low 50s. I actually have some time off, yes. And, again, leaving it all in capable hands. Chuck Bonner, Julie Hayden have Monday and Tuesday, and then former Congressman Bob O'Prey on Wednesday. So that's what's going to happen. Moments ago, we had Jack Cashill on, who I think hung the moon, Obama's Magical Kenyan Mystery Tour. This guy, we first met, my heavens. Joel, when do you think we first hooked up? I was thinking of driving in there this morning. I said, we're going to talk to Joel Gilbert. And I thought, when did I first meet Joel Gilbert? And I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, maybe longer than that.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been in touch, and a lot in the past year.
Do a little bit of your background so people get a sense of who you are before we begin.
Okay, well, I've been a filmmaker for 12 years. I started out making some films about Bob Dylan, some very revelatory films about his career.
Yeah.
I did a few rock and roll comedies as well. And about 6 years ago, I made a film called Farewell Israel, Bush, Iran, and the Revolt of Islam, explaining the Islamic-Jewish conflict, which was a field of study of mine. And I followed up with Atomic Jihad, which was the story of the Iranian nuclear program, and Obama's Politics of Defeat was the subtitle. And through doing that film, I saw many, many speeches of Obama looking for foreign policy statements about Iran. What happened was I saw him in every single speech. He would start to talk about the rich and the poor, and he would get a new personality. He would start screaming and yelling. He put on his black preacher voice about the poor people don't have an opportunity and the rich people, and then he'd go back to his normal voice. And I realized after seeing so many speeches that this guy had a passion for class struggle, and I couldn't figure out why. He had an exclusive prep school, Ivy Leagues, Harvard Law, and that led me down this path. I read his book, Dreams from My Father, and right away it just stuck out as this life journey in the little-known world of American Marxism. He goes to Occidental to study with Marxist professors. He goes to socialist conferences, Malcolm X. He goes to Chicago to organize. And he kept talking about this guy Frank throughout the entire book. Frank here, Frank there. I'm thinking about Frank. I look up this guy Frank. His name is Frank Marshall Davis, who was a Communist Party propagandist and Soviet agent who came out of Chicago to Hawaii to organize the communist takeover of the islands, and was a writer for the communist newspapers. And I saw that Obama looked just like this Frank guy and nothing like the Kenyan Obama. So that's what led me on the path to make the film Dreams from My Real Father, which is an alternate biography which shows that Obama's White House is the dreams from his real father, the real biological father who became his ideological mentor, who was a Soviet agent and Communist Party propagandist. And I think I show that Davis indoctrinated Obama into this ideology, and Obama is a red diaper baby, the child of a Communist Party member.
What strikes me, and I know moments ago we spoke with Jack Cashill, who I know, I think you guys know one another,
Yeah.
But Jack has now taken this to the next level that, again, clean lies and not paying back literary advances, and whether or not there's actually a made-up trip to Kenya. But more importantly, either Bill Ayers or Barack Obama, it's probably worse if it's Bill Ayers, they go to another book and they lift terms and words and they lift entire phrases and they have it reappear in Obama's books. And as we said, anybody else would be nailed for plagiarism, and it apparently, again, it's going to coast by. I guess the question before we go to the guts of everything, and by the way, this time on the show you said you'd love to take calls, so our phone number is 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971 if you want to speak with Joel. Why won't, and I ask this question, why won't anyone other than yourself, Cashill, more and more there are some people, but the MSM, the mainstream press, why won't anybody go near it? And the only time I remember them going near it is when the so-called birth certificate is announced and dropped by Barack Obama that's so fishy and so bizarre and so layered and such a computer-generated document that they trumpet. Here it is. Here's the birth certificate. Drive on. Joel, can you have an explanation for that?
Well, first of all, I can tell you that there is a vast left-wing conspiracy, and the conspiracy is around an idea. The idea, which is shared by so many journalists and so many elites in this country, is the age-old dream of this socialist utopia, that we can achieve utopia here on earth, heaven on earth, and that Obama is their leader that they see as the one who will lead us to this future. It's a classic perversion of Christianity, where they make the leader of the socialist, the leader of the country, is the living God, the immortal living God on earth. So for these people, it's literally a religion for them. This is their religious view of the world, and the Messiah is Barack Obama in this case, just as Chairman Mao was in China, or Ho Chi Minh, or Stalin, and he can do no wrong. Therefore, they see their role in this conspiracy of this idea to promote him and his agenda and achieve this utopian future. They will not say anything negative, and they'll only promote the line or the biblical phrases that he utters.
But why wouldn't, whatever standards we have today, and one of the things that Jack Cashill said is that he's got a big piece coming in American Standard on this plagiarism on Monday.
Okay.
But wasn't it you that told the press club in D.C., there's a Pulitzer Prize in this room, all you really have to do is lift a finger?
Correct. Again and again, I told the National Press Club that the Pulitzer Prize can be yours. All you have to do is watch my film, go on out, do a little research, or it's all they're done for you. Just write up an article, and we can have the result will be a Pulitzer Prize. But there's 100,000 journalists in this country, and literally none of them want to cover the news. Their goal is different. It's to suppress the news. And I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure from the top. Give you an interesting example. I extracted a speech from C-SPAN. There's a very famous speech which has been shown on Hannity a number of times of Obama talking about we're going to reduce the oceans and the planet's going to begin to heal. It's somewhat comical and silly how he's screaming this on the top of his voice. Hannity's shown that many times, and you can probably see it on YouTube. I decided that I'd like to see the original film, the original video, so I ordered it from C-SPAN so I could perhaps use parts of it in my new film project. And I get it from C-SPAN. It's the original high-quality video shown on C-SPAN. And when you get to the line where Obama says we're going to lower the oceans and heal the planet, all of a sudden the camera goes over to the audience, and it's fixed on the audience for 20 seconds. So you cannot see him. You can hear him, but you can't see him. So here we have something that is somewhat comical that has been used to ridicule Obama over the years, that no doubt somebody in the White House or in Obama's cadre have contacted C-SPAN and told them to make sure that no one can have that video. And we see this all over, that everywhere you want access to information, whether it be the IRS scandal, Fast and Furious, or just Obama's image it's under control. And this is the unfortunately the classic Soviet era censorship.
Sure.
People that are here from the Soviet Union say, we've seen this, we know what this is.
Sure. Let me come to this. Hopefully, I've got a couple of days off. We're going to go for Mike Zullo and the guys out of Joe Pyle.
Right.
They are supposed to be sitting on something new. And again, I'm just an internet guy. I've met Sheriff Joe, spoken with him, spoken with Mike. Joel, do you have any knowledge or any advance on what these guys are about to talk about or are talking about?
I'm not sure what their current issue is. I've provided them some information from my research, and there is a great deal of information that hasn't been made public. The problem seems to be that their hesitancy seems to be that even if they did make something public, it would probably largely be ignored. So I think their struggle has been to try to decide when to and how to present information, knowing that the courts are going to refer the information to Congress, and if you bring it to Congress, they're going to refer you to the courts.
Yeah.
And that seems to have been the dilemma with the information. Anything about Obama's birth certificate, even though it's clearly a very, very poor forgery.
Absolutely.
There is just a fear in every institution to even discuss it, not in the newspapers, not in the courts, and not in Congress. So you may be the only forum where they can actually present the evidence. But the concern is, in a normal world, it would be number one news story. In this world that we live in, it seems to be irrelevant.
Our guest, of course, is Joel Gilbert, filmmaker, historian, researcher, and willing to take calls this morning. 303, not that he's never been willing, he's always been willing, but I'm going to make a case out of it. 303-696-1971. When we looked at that birth certificate, and of course, that the drumbeat had gotten so loud, and what's bizarre is how it gets there. He has a private attorney do a night flight, and they bring a PDF file. They don't bring the document. In other words, they don't bring a credential. They bring, and on this credential, on this PDF file, which has been layered, it's provable to be layered, they say father's race, and they put on his as race African. Now, the best of my knowledge, and you're the expert, can you find any other birth certificates in Hawaii? Because African is not a race. Can you ever been across another birth certificate for anyone that claims the race of the dad or mother is African?
No, I have seen and obtained other birth certificates from African Americans born in Hawaii around the same time as Obama, and they all have the race of the father as Negro and not African.
Right. African's not a race. I mean,
African's not a race.
Right.
There's so many anomalies. That's just one of them.
Point out others. Point others that stand out to you.
Well, others that stand out, for example, on Obama's birth certificate that was issued by the White House, you see that there's little tiny numbers written by hand throughout the birth certificate. Those numbers appear in light gray color. They're written in by pencil, and they're light gray. A photocopier, which is what Laura Fuddy, the one lady who died, who issued the birth certificate, the story was that they simply photocopied the birth certificate as they did for anybody out of the original book that it was located in. Now, a photocopy machine does not make different colors. You would not be able to see gray. The color gray would not exist. So on all the other birth certificates I've seen, those little pencil marks are black. Another thing that you'll see is on the edge on Obama's document, you see a strong shadow. Now, a shadow, again, will not appear on a copy machine because a very light, bright bulb flashes. The only way you get a shadow is if you're in a scanner. So it's clear that this gave more evidence that Obama's birth certificate is, in fact, the result of a computer scan production rather than a photocopy like they claim. So there's at least 40 or 50 areas that indicate that Obama's certificate is fraudulent. The bigger picture is, as I think I've shown in my film, Dreams from My Real Father, is that no matter where Obama was born, he's probably eligible to be president because I believe both his parents were American citizens.
Yeah, I do too.
However, he is guilty all the way down the line of the cover-up, which is a crime called document fraud. He submitted this birth certificate to these election commissions around the country as proof positive of his citizenship.
What about this? When you would say to yourself, but the entire story, and Joel and I have talked, Jack and I have talked about, I've talked with so many people, what he called the improbable story of the Kenyan goat herd and the girl from Kansas, the farm girl from Kansas, that kills it right there. It's not true.
Correct. Obama presented it. It actually first emerged as early as 1990 when Obama was elected to the president of the Harvard Law Review. They wrote about his life history. They interviewed him. And this is when the false narrative actually first emerged. If you look back at those articles, you can Google them at Harvard. He claimed this is the story. It starts right there. My father was a goat herder from Kenya.
Right.
My mother was an anthropologist like Margaret Mead, which was an exaggeration.
That's not true either, right, yeah.
And he puts forward this narrative that he promoted at Harvard, that he's going to bring people together because of this unique multicultural background. And he stuck with that successfully to hide his true roots and his true ideological foundation.
Do you think he was handed that story, that himself he makes that story up, or do you think with Stan, the granddad, Gramps, and Toot, that Madeline Payne, Madeline Dunham, do you think that they manufacture a story for him, help him with his story, or he simply comes up with this on his own? Because I believe he had help with the story.
I'll explain that. Obama was raised by Frank Marshall Davis. He was very close to him his entire life. He knew that he was his real father. There was no question of that.
Do you think he knew that Barack Sr., the so-called Kenyan Obama, did you think that Barack Obama knows that that's not his biological father?
Absolutely. He was told from a very young age, and this is why he was raised by Davis, admittedly, in Obama's own words, from a very young age. The narrative was created in Chicago. Obama comes there after Columbia. He's there for 3 years, working in the communist organization. He's known Bill Ayers for already about 5-6 years by that time in 1982.
So Ayers is not just a guy from the neighborhood, right? That's not even remotely close.
He's the guy from the ideological neighborhood that he met in New York City. And they decide that Obama is thinking of, and they think they could promote him to become mayor of Chicago one day. This is early 80s. And they assist him through this network of the Arab funders. We've written about that, how Obama's Harvard law career was funded by the Libyans and the Saudis.
No, I know. And you know what makes that interesting is the ensconcing, if you would, of the $125,000 advance from Simon & Schuster that Jack's now talking about, and they never gave it back, and the Obama said we had to pay, or Barack Obama said we had to pay student loans, but I understood he was a scholarship kid.
Well, Obama's been making that case even as early as, last year. Him and Michelle say, I just paid back my student loans when I became a senator.
But there's no evidence of that.
It's a way to try to identify with people and hide the fact that Louis Farrakhan was going to Libya in the early 80s raising money from Gaddafi for black students and minority students, and Reverend Wright would go with him. He was part of it. So I believe that there's enough evidence to show that Obama got in on those scholarships, and in preparing to go for Harvard, this is when the false narrative was created by Obama with help from Bill Ayers and this close-knit gang. When you go to Harvard, don't say you're the son of Frank Marshall Davis and you're a red diaper baby. Just say that you're,
the goat herd.
You're the goat herder, and you're going to bring people together, and maybe you'll go somewhere.
Hang on a second, a hard break. Like I said, he'll take calls. We have some callers on the line. Joel Gilbert. This guy's fascinating again, our guest is Joel Gilbert. We have phone lines ready. I'm going to, worst case, would you bring up line 1, please, for me? I don't want to screw this up. Bring up Dan. Dan, you're on the radio show. Good morning.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I have to disagree with Joel Gilbert. I think that all those CDs he sent to Ohio in this last election basically destroyed Romney's chances, because there's no evidence that Frank Marshall Davis is Obama's father. I don't look like anything like my parents.
I do.
I don't look anything like my, and even you, Peter, you've never said that, Frank Marsh. Yeah, if you're going to go after the president, you have to go after him with facts.
All right, hang on a second.
Okay, I'd be happy to answer that one.
All right, go ahead.
What we do in the film, if you've seen the film, which I suspect you have not, I would urge you to look at it. First, we look at Obama's story, which is my father was a goat herder from Kenya. My daddy left me when I was 2 years old, and we completely debunk that with all the evidence that shows that his mother went to Seattle when he was only 2 weeks old, and that he never met the Kenyan, and that the mother probably never met the Kenyan. We show all the documentary evidence. After debunking Obama's story completely, we then look at, well, what could be true? We see that Obama was raised by Davis, that he admits that he had a lifelong relationship with him. We look at the fact that Obama's photos look exactly like Davis and nothing like the Kenyan. And then I've talked to neighbors of Davis, friends, relatives, and absent DNA, which a lot of people are convicted for murder in this country still to this day based on a mountain of circumstantial evidence. And we think that in the film we show a mountain of circumstantial evidence that Obama's book, Dreams from My Father, was a fraud and a conspiracy theory which has no evidence to back it up. And my film, Dreams from My Real Father, is the story of Obama's life, which has all the evidence and everything that puts together the true story. As far as sending DVDs out to Ohio, this was the chance that anyone had, because the media was not telling the truth about Obama's background, that he was trained ideologically by a committed Marxist and a Soviet agent, and he was a child of this ideology, much like Bill Ayers and these other red diaper babies from the 60s. So this was the chance that people had to know the truth. And we've had thousands of emails and people saying, thank you, we learned something. And
But you're just like Dan Rather, okay, based on evidence that just isn't there. Okay, I don't look like my parents. You're basing this whole thing on he doesn't look like his parents.
No,
I don't look
not.
like my parents.
But I do.
Okay?
But
I don't look like my parents.
Hang on, Dan.
And I believe Moranis when he says that Obama lied 39 times.
I know you're very passionate, and the Organizing for Action meeting, I'm sure that they've helped you with this narrative.
Actually, I listen to Peter all the time. I believe that Obama lied in his book 39 times. I believe what Moranis says that Obama lied 39 times.
I urge you to watch the film.
Let me jump in. Let me jump in the middle. Let me ask Dan to caller. Dan, do you believe that he was 2.5 years of age when his father went to Harvard?
No, I believe that Obama.
Okay,
I believe that his mother left this abusive man, Obama, when he was 2 weeks old.
Whoa, now you're talking about. Hang on just a second.
I believe that
wait a minute, Dan. Wait when he was 2 weeks old. Wait a minute. All right. How do you come to a conclusion that Barack Sr. was abusive?
Well, she got the hell away from him.
No. That doesn't. Now you just done what you accused this man of doing. What evidence do you have that Barack Obama Sr. was abusive?
Well, I just believe that stuff. He was
isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting?
Drunk and he got it.
No.
Didn't she?
Well, of course she did. But
his
listen
mom
to me.
Didn't leave him when he was 2 weeks old.
Listen to me again. You made a statement. Now, on the other hand, Gilbert, I think, is pretty on the money. I mean, I look like my dad, and my brother looks like my dad. My brother looks like me. My sister really looks like my grandma. I have a grandson. This kid looks like mini-me. And so...
I don't look like my parents.
I don't care. Joel, do you look like your mom or dad?
I do.
Yeah. I mean, in most cases...
But listen, Dan, let me say one thing.
I think you didn't have the facts.
Dan, hold on one second.
I think if your narrative was
hang on, Dan, hang on.
It would have made a difference.
1 second. Hang on, Dan. Here's what the film shows. Number one, the Kenyan is not the father. Number two, Davis is obviously the most likely father.
Picture.
All right. Well, that picture is up. Why don't you take a look at the picture, Dan? It's up on the
have.
All right. And what do you conclude?
Yeah. What I want to tell you, Dan, is what we show in the film is that whether or not you personally need DNA to show you beyond a doubt, we show that Davis became the ideological father, which is more important and more dangerous for the country.
No, he doesn't have to. I disagree. He doesn't have to. Dan, listen, thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's go here. We'll go to this. Hey, Tom, you're on the radio show. Good morning, thank you. It's 8:31. Tom. Did we lose Tom?
No, I'm here.
You're on the air, sir.
Okay, thank you. Joel, good morning.
Hi.
I read it with great interest. Paul Kengor
Yes.
book, The Communist, Part 1.
Yeah.
Very good.
Davis. All right. Tell us about Jarrett and Axelrod's connection to Obama and the White House. People don't even know about that, who Axelrod really is, and Jarrett.
You're talking about Valerie Jarrett plus the influence of her father, too. That's important.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thanks for the question. Well, David Axelrod grew up in New York City. Both his parents were Communist Party USA members. His mother was a communist journalist, just as Obama's father was a communist journalist for PM Magazine in New York. And Axelrod's father was a member of the Communist Party. Now go over to Valerie Jarrett. Her father-in-law was Vernon Jarrett, who was a Communist Party USA member and a colleague of Obama's father at the Chicago Defender. So we have, you can just imagine.
When you say father, you're talking about Frank Marshall Davis.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Frank Marshall Davis.
Go ahead.
So just imagine, let's say the year is 2002, and Obama is a state senator, and there he is with two of his best buddies, two other red diaper babies in 2002, saying, well, what can we do to further this agenda? And they say, well, why don't we try to get you to run for this Senate seat, and then we'll see what happens after that. So this hardcore ideological group out of Chicago, these Marxists, within 6 years after this conversation that Obama lost a a congressional seat to Bobby Rush, the amazing thing is that in 6 years they were able to infiltrate the White House without any of this information being made public. It's just a shocking development. Some people describe it as a coup, how these people could have come from such a committed ideological background in communism, and no one was able to even know it.
What I find interesting, and by this is Peter, Tom, if you read the propensities of everything that's out there, and then you take these accepted biographies, whether it's Moranis or Obama himself, or things that these people, A Remarkable Woman, I think was that book about his mother, they are provable to be lies. They are not true stories. And so if you say to somebody, do you really believe that Barack Obama, at 2.5 years of age, give or take, maybe 3, went to the airport in Honolulu and hugged Daddy goodbye and Mommy, Mrs. Obama, and of course she never was married to the guy and leaves. Now, whether he was abusive or not, they never lived together. How would she know he was abusive? He kept his apartment. She stayed on with her mother and father, and then she splits. Now, one of the questions I've asked Joel is to leave the Rock, leave Hawaii, when her dad's working in a furniture store. Big Stan's working, they call him Gramps. He's selling furniture, and Toot's working as a bank teller. Now, how did they get the dough up? And I'm asking this of Joel, to send her back to Seattle, enroll her in night school. We know they paid babysitters. I mean, this is all evidentiary. There's paperwork that makes this case. Joel, where'd they get the dough to do that?
I think that this is not an area that has a great deal of suspicion. I'll tell you why. Because they just came out of Washington State, so she probably got in-state tuition while she was there. Regardless,
where'd they get the money?
And it was an only child, of course, so they were able to save up some money. I do not believe that Stan, as I show in my film, was actually a furniture salesman. Okay. All the evidence shows he was working for the CIA for many years.
Right.
The mother worked in a bank, which was a decent salary. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, this little plan to send her off to college for 4 years at the University of Washington in Seattle blew out after about a year and a half.
Yeah, when she comes back, right.
Maybe they did run out of money and couldn't sustain it. So that's possible.
There are other people that say that she only returns when Barack Sr. does leave.
Oh, there's no question. That's in evidence that the Kenyan got the scholarship to Harvard, which he had applied for a visa extension, not a green card. and he was off the island by the time she came back a year and a half later.
And Barack then, when he senior goes to Harvard, he does then get married. He marries another woman, even though he already is married back in Kenya, and he takes her back to Kenya with him, right?
Correct. Now, I like to point out that there is no Barack Obama Senior. We often refer to him as Senior.
You're right.
There is no Senior because there's no Junior.
Okay, well said. But I'm saying it just for, so people can follow along.
I know, but just it's a major point that they called him Barack Obama the Second, which means another person. It's not the son of.
Yeah, I thought somebody had to be dead before you can pick up the deuce or something. But all those things aside, you're right. I do take that back.
All right.
All right. So having said that, I come back to Tom the caller. Tom, Tom's gone. We lost Tom's call. But why can't people again come to terms with this? We just put up your work on 710knus.com, Dreams from My Real Father. I'm puzzled at this because, I know people saying, well, my dad, doesn't look like me. Hell, in most cases, we really do look like our parents, except when we used to say it was the milkman, right?
Right. As I was trying to tell that gentleman that we know that Obama's story is false, whether you must have DNA, like O.J. had to have his DNA,
right.
Before you want to admit that Davis is the father, is irrelevant. What we do show in the film, and what is evident from Obama's policies, is that Frank Marshall Davis, who is a Communist Party propagandist, a committed Stalinist and Marxist, anti-white hater of America, is the man who raised Obama by his own admission from age 9. And the ideological mirror of Obama is not a goat herder from Kenya. It's an anti-white Marxist who believes in destroying the American traditions, American way of life, and replacing it with a socialist Marxist society.
Has anyone, as a question right before the hard break, has anyone ever been able to find anybody that was a classmate, a fellow student, a roomie, lived in the same building as Barack Obama, quote, Sarby Sr., who ever said they met Stanley Ann Dunham?
I did speak to a friend of the Kenyan, in one of the foreign students that studied with him in Hawaii. He's 80 years old. I talked to him very recently, and he confirmed to me that he never knew of Ann Dunham, that the Kenyan was married or that he had a child. It was never even heard of this. He was shocked.
They can't find anybody, right?
He was shocked to hear this, and this is something that David Moranis also interviewed these people, and they told him, all the friends of the Kenyan said, we never heard he ever got married.
But Barack Obama tells you that they had the happy household, mommy, daddy, and him, and they never admitted that the place that she goes to live after the birth is that place that is rented by Gramps and Toot, and that's makes that crazy, bizarre part of the Bill O'Reillys, and I saw the the announcement in the newspapers. I mean, it doesn't add up, does it?
It doesn't add up, and it's just that's just one small part of the false narrative to cover an ideological Marxist lifestyle and upbringing with something generic that you can hide it with. So when you try to get elected, you say things like, I'm going to have a transparent administration, I'm going to reduce the deficit. You can say all these things, and people might believe you. If they know your real background, they would know that you're lying.
Hang on, sir, if you would. Hard break time. We have full lines. And again, now up on 710knus.com, you can see much, again, of Mr. Gilbert's work. Take a look at those three pictures of Barack Obama and the man who people call Barack Obama Sr. and Frank Marshall Davis. You can do so at 710knus.com. Make up your own mind. January the 10th, our guest is filmmaker, historian Joel Gilbert. We are coming up on time with full lines, so you know we're going to come back with this. But I have to ask you, I know just because of private conversation, you got a lot of stuff back up in the pipe. What are we going to see and what are we going to hear next?
Well, got a couple things in the works. I do have a new film project that's going to go much deeper, not only into Obama's personal background, but ideologically, the entire movement that has been going on really all the way back to 1917, this idea of a socialist society and how it's failed again and again and again miserably. It's led to poverty and starvation, and how this movement is making a comeback in America simply because today's socialists simply do not want to admit or recognize the failures of socialism and communism, and how it suppresses production, it suppresses activity, no one wants to work, and then the entire society is poor and worse off. You still have people like Bill de Blasio being elected and saying if we just instead of trying to solve problems like with education or how to get things better, their solution to every problem is, well, let's take more money from people that are productive and throw it into this rat hole, and somehow if I'll be elected and I'll make your lives better. It's been proven again and again to be a complete fantasy for illiterate children, yet they still pursue this ideology.
I've had some pretty good conversations here the last couple of days. One guy is a writer, and the other guy was a talk show host, Hugh Hewitt, and they believe that there's a bright, shiny future. I don't. I believe that the course of events, and of course when you talked about, socialism in Europe and the stuff that was presented in this country after the Bolsheviks, was that everything was going to be fine and we could take care of everything. What we really needed to do was, own the railroads or seize the means of production, or the kinds of things that were taking place in Soviet Union, and the Hungarians gave a shot at it. And I have a kind of a dismal view of these characters and what they are capable of doing and what they'll do next. Where are you on that, Joel?
I'm with you, Peter. The idea of a socialist utopia where everyone can do as much as they can and get everything they want is a fantasy. It's impossible. That's why utopia, the word utopia in Latin, means no place.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
The road to no place is going to lead to something horrible, not to something good.
And it's not new. I would take it back before 1917, but that aside, when I look at the nation and I see how many people have become dependent on the welfare of the state, the so-called welfare state, for food, and Obamacare, and this is my broken record. Does anybody? I guess there's plenty of people out there that believe that Obamacare is about delivering better health care to you and your family, or that gun control is about guns, or any of these kinds of things. And it's absolutely not true. It's part of the same slippery slope that we have witnessed again and again and again. And somebody made a remark that the only place that communism remains alive in the world today is the Democratic Progressive Party and in universities and colleges. What do you do with that?
Well, they have, since these characters, the SDS and the Weather Underground, were defeated and their ideology failed miserably, they went into education, they went into the institutions, journalism, entertainment, to the point that they are now controlling the agenda. So all these things you mentioned, to help people with their health care, to make things safer with gun control, these are simple cover stories, but the reality is these are socialist tools to eliminate the middle class
it's freedom and power.
Free market.
Yeah. Listen, we're out of time. We'll talk again next week. Your work's up on the website as always, Joel. Thank you very much for taking calls and being part of our morning. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Joel Gilbert.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.